Hi, and welcome to the next film in our Ultra series, where we'll discuss process mapping. Although process mapping is not directly related to legal technology, it enables the technology to work effectively. Process mapping is a workflow diagram or a flowchart to get a clearer understanding of a process. It visually describes the flow of work. Process maps show stages that produce an end result, and it shows who and what is involved in a process, and it can reveal areas where a process should be improved. But for our purposes, it also allows the stages of work to be mapped in a way that will make using AI software much easier. Computer programs struggle with vague or incomplete descriptions, as they lack intuition and often can't fill in the blanks in the way a human could. You can't just say, accounting will deal with all the usual stuff, or then we file the appropriate paperwork at company's house. A machine just won't understand.
There are two main types of process map: value stream maps and workflow maps. A value stream map is a process map at a high level, able to be understood by people without intimate knowledge of the department. It allows for a more strategic approach and contributions from a much wider range of people. In the 1950s, this type of tool became associated with the Toyota production system and the whole lean manufacturing movement. These types of maps are useful for strategy, but less useful for our purposes of helping to program legal software. However, they are still worth exploring briefly. Value stream maps have three key elements: a communications flow, which is how people pass information or commands along; a process flow, which is how the thing or service progresses as it gets made; a timeline, which is how long each part of the process takes. This is a very simple value stream map using a lot of common symbols. A data box would usually be populated with more detailed information about the particular process step. It gives an overview picture of the business with key areas of the process shown. It does not go into too much detail, but it does allow a very clear overview to identify strategic options.
So now that you know a bit more about value stream maps, let's look at workflow process maps in a bit more detail. These are process maps with a detailed step-by-step guide to completing a process, with more information on particular inputs and outputs at each stage. These maps will usually have the following elements: what people do, how they do it, how they interact with other employees and processes, and how the entire process flows. For people looking at efficiencies, these workflow process maps need to be pretty good, about 70% accurate. But we are not generally looking at efficiencies. We're trying to use this information to program software. That means it has to be as accurate as possible. The traditional 70% accuracy won't be enough. So whatever happens at each stage, there must be a process to manage it. If the associate passes the draft to a partner for review, there needs to be an option for partner approves, partner amends, and partner returns the draft to the associate for the associate to amend. There might even be an option for the partner decides the document is no longer necessary, and you need corresponding options for all these future actions.
Here's an example of part of a process map. This shows the flow of work. We will take a look at each part of the map. Don't focus on the details of the procedure. We just want to understand how the process map works. It is important to describe the task clearly and include any relevant information. These tasks often have subparts to them, with instructions on which parts need to be done and how each part is to be completed. These can be linked to the templates and other supporting resources to better describe and to help complete the process. Process maps have a set of symbols that allow people or computers to recognise quickly what is happening at each stage. These symbols vary from chart to chart. Process maps are often large and complicated. By linking to other process maps, you can keep the information on one page manageable. You can see that these workflow maps have much more detail and require more intimate knowledge of the business to write and understand them. However, once they are completed, they can give a roadmap to your legal software.
Let's move on and talk about another kind of map, swim lane maps. Swim lane maps are a type of workflow map, and they allow the diagram to easily show which department or person is completing a particular function. It's most useful when different departments or functions interact. Here you can see at a glance the division between the billing team, the legal team and the approval committee. The different teams have their own lanes, so you can see who does what and how much work each team does. So you might be wondering, why do we use process maps? In traditional process mapping, at least two maps are produced, a current state and a desired future state. However, for our purposes, we are more interested in breaking down the current process than changing it. But it's still useful when creating process maps to ask yourself at each stage of the process, does the activity move the matter forward? Is it something the client wants and is willing to pay for? And has it been done right the first time?
Complex legal work is difficult to map in a linear way like this, but there are parts of what lawyers do that can be mapped in diagrams. It is usually surprising to most lawyers how much can be mapped in this way. There are also lots of component parts to the law firm, which are not direct legal work. These are much easier to map. IT best practices, human resources, client engagement, practice-specific processes that provide competitive advantage, billing and accounts management, and finally, linking processes to documents and client-specific workflows.
Process maps serve multiple purposes. The knowledge of the top partners is a firm's greatest asset, and process maps capture the best practices of the best lawyers. Mapping also allows the firm to market themselves more effectively by being able to describe their own processes clearly. It will also train students or new associates in these practices. It can estimate price and timescales more accurately as well. Crucially, for our purposes, it also gives you a defined structure that you can use to program software around.
Let's now turn to data and metadata. The defined structure of process maps supported by software will allow you to generate data in a way that will be very informative. It may show you that we generate 60% of our profits from this part, or cases which reach a particular stage have a 70% chance of being settled. Digitizing data is a huge part of taking advantage of legal technology. Data allows the systems to work properly and allows them to make better decisions. Machines are now very good at scanning documents, reading them, and even interpreting natural language. Once you have a defined structure through process mapping, the number of data points and the usefulness of that data increases dramatically. Contracts created within a properly designed software program will have all of that data. But if you just scan 1,000 printed contracts into a system, then the contracts will be digitized, but there would be a lot of metadata missing from those files. On screen now are some examples of metadata that law firms would find useful. Metadata will tell you how long it took to write the document and what the fee arrangement was, and a whole host of other metrics. This can all feed back into a law firm's strategy when reviewing processes.
By creating a system that either requires manual data input or automatic data input, or more likely both, and combining that with process mapping, you can generate a huge amount of useful data for data analytics. Modern data analytics software often has clear and easy to visualize dashboards which give you trends and key statistics easily. You can work out which work is the most profitable, which departments are efficient, and much more besides. So you may focus your efforts on improving the process for the contract that takes you the longest time to draft. Perhaps you might even cut the time in half. It might look good, but if you only have 2 of those contracts per year, it might not help you much overall. But if you could reduce the time it takes you to do a fairly short contract, but you've got thousands of them, that would help your business a lot. This kind of information is readily available with data analytics.
Finally, let's talk a bit about automating processes. Now that we have a process map, the software can track our cases through it. And the software is also generating and tracking lots of data. That data can be used not only to keep track of things, but also save time. billing, time recording, work allocation, etc. are all fairly easy to automate, at least parts of them, once you have the right data in the right place. Time recording, not so long ago, used to be done by filling in timesheets by hand. Those timesheets would then be put onto a central system by secretaries. That is a simple form of an automated task that we now use. Reminders about follow-up client care letters, filing deadlines for Companies House or the Land Registry, etc. are also now simple to do with the right data. As AI becomes more capable and can do more sections of the process map, we can save more time and more money by handing them over to the machines.